Welcome to Dinner with Dan, where we are sharing industry insights with leaders in the sport, entertainment, and events industry. I'm your host, Dan Donovan, founder and managing partner of Stratoscope. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to another episode of Dinner with Dan. Tonight, I have the distinct pleasure of having Adam Stockwell from the Milwaukee Bucks, Vice President of Security. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me.
You have an interesting background as far as people in your role in this industry. You played college soccer at NC State.
I did.
And you ended up at the Secret Service.
Yes.
How?
Well, went to college at NC State, played 4 years of soccer there, and didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. So like any good student, I went to graduate school. Did my graduate work, and when I was home for Christmas break, I had a conversation with my mom in the driveway, which is where all great conversations in our family happen, the driveway or the kitchen. And she looked at me and said, "What are you going to do with your life?" I said, "I'm going to go be a secret agent." And she looked at me in the eye and said, "Why don't you go look into that?" So I walked inside, dialed up America Online, and started doing research on several three-letter agencies in the Secret Service. And the Secret Service really struck my interest. I applied with the service and the CIA. Service answered first. It was a long process. Ironically, when I was in the Secret Service Academy, I got the call from the CIA that they were interested, and I was like, "Oh, sorry, I'm already with the service." So that's the rough and dirty of how I got in.
That's phenomenal. Like, you were growing up, did you ever say prior to that conversation in the driveway, "I'm going to be a Secret Service agent"?
No. I'd been around the Secret Service. My dad was a military pilot. He was a Marine Corps pilot. So I had an opportunity a couple times. I saw Ronald Reagan when I was in 5th grade. My Young Astronauts Club went to Washington for the day and saw him at an event. And I saw the Secret Service and thought it was cool. And we had a family friend who knew somebody in the Secret Service, but it never really clicked with me until it was my mom said that and going, "Huh, that's something I could really do."
That's phenomenal. And thank you for your service.
Well, thanks.
Tell us about some of that. Like, you get involved and you're on President's Detail and some other really interesting assignments, some you might not be able to tell us about, but like, give us that experience of being responsible for the Commander-in-Chief.
Well, that's probably one of the highest responsibilities in the country, right? They're called a zero-fail mission. You got to be right every time, every day. That guy only has to be right once. So it can be an incredible burden, but I've never worked with a group of people more dedicated to a singular mission in my life. They were just outstanding friends and coworkers, and it was intense and it was fun. The camaraderie was through the roof, the sense of accomplishment, the sense of teamwork, which I think translated from the college soccer days.
Right.
A lot of former athletes and military folks make up the Secret Service, and I don't think that's a coincidence.
Right.
So big on teamwork, being part of something bigger than yourself, and that really lent itself to accomplishing that mission. So.
Anything you can share from any interesting stories that
plenty
some of our viewers can enjoy with us?
Plenty of interesting stories. Just the training was awesome. But you learn most of it through doing the missions themselves. And I had the honor of being on the President's Detail for well over 5 years, almost 6 years. I started with President Bush and finished with President Obama after his re-election. Traveled around the world. I think my wife and I I've been to 44 countries. Some for a couple hours, some for several weeks. Places that I never thought I'd be. Sitting on a beach in Jakarta, or the pyramids of Gaza. All those experiences were pretty neat. But some harrowing experiences. There was an incident in former Soviet Republic of Georgia. We didn't know until afterwards that there had been a hand grenade thrown. It just malfunctioned, and that was about 10 meters from where I was. So you live and learn from that experience, and plenty of other funny stories, interesting stories, scary stories. People say, "Oh, aren't you scared?" And that's a high-stress job. I guess it is, but it's all about what you know. So
right.
It becomes your daily routine. And my blood pressure always said I was good. So my doctors were always amazed with the blood pressure.
So are you suggesting that was a little more stress than taking care of a team?
Different. Yeah, I guess technically it was, but you still, we in the championships last year, you catch yourself like you're thinking a million different directions. I'm focusing on the team right now. I'm also concerned about what's going on outside. Hey, how's Ingress going? It's a lot of the same reps and routines. You and I have joked before, and I told you, being a Secret Service agent was basically being a well-paid, gun-carrying event planner.
Right.
So you're focused on ingress, numbers, screening, security, buffering, all those things that have translated over to go from the Secret Service world to the civilian sports and entertainment world.
And I don't know if you remember, but there was a time, and I want to say it was around the time of the Atlanta Olympics, so 95, 96. I think that the lead agency for the Atlanta Olympics was the FBI. And I think it transitioned over by the time the Salt Lake Olympics came over, that the Secret Service was the lead agency for the Olympics.
And probably where that led from, and it's not a shot at the FBI, a great law enforcement agency, but they're general. Now their mission's anti-terrorism mostly, but they do everything.
Right.
Everything. After 9/11 happened, the service went from Treasury to Department of Homeland Security was formed. Part of that formation through the acts of Congress was naming the Secret Service as the lead agency for all national special security events, or NSSEs. So that's when the Secret Service officially took over Super Bowl, Olympics, those kinds of things.
What were you doing on 9/11?
I was a young agent. I was just in my second year as an agent. I've been in for about 14 months, maybe 16 months. I got to the Raleigh resident office, had the TV on back in the back of the office, and walked by, and someone said, "Hey, something just happened at the World Trade Center." I think we had ABC Good Morning America on, or whatever it was at the time. So we all kind of started gathering around the TV, and guys were arriving for work for the day. The first plane had already hit, and then we all watched the second plane hit. And my boss, the agent in charge of that office, turned to all of us and told us to go home and pack our bags. You're heading to New York.
Right.
So we didn't know what we were going to be doing, but we knew we were going.
Very interesting. So you how many years were you with the Secret Service?
Almost 16, 17, somewhere in there.
And you get this phone call about maybe getting involved in a team in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Right. Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Well, my wife had a job opportunity in Milwaukee, and we thought long and hard about it, and said, "Okay, we're not going to know unless you give it a shot." She has her PhD, and so she took the position, and she and my daughter moved to Milwaukee. I stayed back in Washington, and I was working on a transfer with the service to the Milwaukee office. So I was technically calling my own shot, and that transfer, very long story, but that transfer didn't work out. And then the transfer to Chicago after that didn't work out. I could probably count on one hand the number of bad days I had in the service, and that was 2 of them. So we were looking at having to bring the girls back to Washington, and then that's when I got the phone call from the Milwaukee Bucks that they were looking for a chief security officer.
Peter Fagan,
who's a force of nature.
And Peter had talked to Jerome Pickett.
So Jerome was the chief security officer for the NBA proper. He had come in the year before as the new chief security officer. And his big thing in the industry was, hey, when there's a chief marketing officer, a chief human capital officer, chief, you name it. Why there are no chief security officers? Are fairly limited in pro sports. Normally, it's a director level, buried under operations somewhere.
Right.
So there's not a totally unified security effort, and security plays a major role in what we do in these organizations. So he pitched to Peter. Jerome pitched to Peter and said, "Hey, you need to consider doing this." That when he was meeting with all the NBA teams, you need to consider having a strong C-level representative. And Peter 100% agreed.
Right.
And said, we just bought the team, new ownership change of the team. Peter said, "We're not ready yet." And then a year later came back to Jerome and said, "Hey, we're ready, but we need a resume."
Well, Peter never consulted me. But I believe this was about the time Peter was, I was working with the team on the design for the Fiserv Forum. And Mark Farha and Peter and I were presenting to Jerome and his team on where we were with plans, what we're going to be able to do, not be able to do, meet the standards, not meet the standards, wherever we were in the design phase. And I'm guessing just based on that timing, Peter was probably talking to Jerome right about that same time while we were all in New York. So I get a phone call. Mark Farha calls me and says, "Hey, we've got a new VP of security."
Yep, I remember that call well.
"I'm going to put you on speakerphone. Meet Adam Stockwell."
Yeah, that was my first week.
Yeah, and I said, "Adam, what are you doing Tuesday? Why don't you come to Orlando?"
Yep, it was at the, which organization was at the NCS4?
I think it was NCS4 or As Is.
It was As Is. That's what it was. So, yeah, I was like, okay, this is a whole new world to me. I know an awful lot about security, but it's like, I don't know the ins and outs. So here's my shepherd. Okay, here we go. Yeah, I jumped on a plane and came on down.
It was fascinating because I remember taking you around that show and showing you all those toys.
Yes.
And I'm like, you can have this, or you might not get any of it. It just depends on, where we land with different integrators.
I think even more importantly was stay away from this.
Right.
You have 1,000 of these, only 3 of them are worth anything, which, without stroking egos here, yeah, I'm a security expert. I knew damn well what I was doing, but in this application, it was very new. So to have someone, yourself, saying, hey, here's what you need to be aware of, steer clear of this is where we're thinking, that was beyond helpful.
Yeah, I mean, and it was a great working relationship, because while the design of the building was a high priority for you, you had some other tasks you had to take care of first.
Yeah, so the number one task was securing the team. That was made very clear to me. Our number one priority was making sure the team was taken care of.
They're kind of a big asset.
Kind of a big asset. The whole reason we all get paid and have a job is because that team.
Right.
So I traveled with the team 100% of the time, if you remember.
Yep, I do.
While trying to do this, and it was pulling in a lot of different directions. I don't think I got a whole lot of sleep that year. I know you and I had a lot of phone calls. I'm in San Francisco today. I'm in Seattle tomorrow.
Right.
But it was important to shore up the team security. So I did a lot of hiring for that year.
You got that in place, and we get into the throes of opening a new training facility, and
that opened a year before the arena.
Right, and then the arena the year after. When you, in the role experience that you had prior, right? You secured spaces or perimeters, or close spaces for president or other dignitaries. Now you're looking at, I got these buildings, I got this asset being this team, but I've also got 20,000 people that I'm going to have inside this building, or 18,000, whatever the number is. Where did your experience of what you did with the agency apply to, now I got this? I got brick and mortar, and I got people.
But for the differences were 99% of the time I was coming into a venue and securing the venue that already existed. Now I'm coming in and we're building the venue and building that security plan into that, which was a heavy lift. The other part of what we did in the Secret Service that people don't quite understand, we're not just protecting the president. Ultimately, that's who we're taking care of. It was, how do we protect that whole venue? So we had to have a plan for everybody that came into that venue, because our perimeter started several hundred meters out.
Sure.
Screening everybody in. We didn't have a plan just for the president. We had to have the emergency medical plan for the crowd. I mean, I saw more than one person have a heart attack during a presidential event. You had to have a plan for how to handle that, how to get EMS to them. So a lot of that did translate over.
Very similar.
And it was the standards that we abided by, measured up with industry standards in the sports and entertainment industry pretty well already. None of that was a surprise or a shock. But we probably, our public-facing side, everyone thought we're there just to take care of the president, but we had a very robust plan to take care of everyone in the venue.
So a lot of similarities.
Yeah.
We had the opportunity to go down to Joe Coomer's building at Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
Wonderful experience.
For a national championship game.
Come on down and observe.
Then President Trump decided he was going to attend.
On, I think it was 48 hours notice.
Poor Joe, who will be a guest. We talk about standards, and when you went from the agency and seeing how you screen people, public facing, back of house, etc., with that level of talent, versus you had been to a lot of arenas by this time, traveling with the team, you did your homework with each of those arenas, you learned a lot in a fast time, because I remember you bouncing things off of me, and I'm like, wow, he's really getting this. How do you feel about that standard and that labor difference that you're dealing with from the agency to an arena?
Well, it's a fair question. Technology-wise, I was a big proponent of using a certain magnetometer, because that's what we use in the service, and that was known as the best one out there. And we had the opportunity to buy it, and we did. But it all comes down to who's operating and what's your operational method.
Right.
In the service, you had the benefit of, we had uniform division officers that ran those magnetometers, and that's their job, and they're going to do it right and well every time, all day long. The fatigue's not there, the I don't care level's not there. Now I'm dealing with $15 an hour employees who might not really care if they find the gun or the knife or the contraband or whatever it be. So that was a shock. I knew it was going to happen, but it was quite the luxury being in the federal government and having the full, I could direct the full force of federal government assets to what I wanted to accomplish. Now I'm up against labor numbers and costs and justifications, and so fortunately I had a very strong supporter in Peter Fagan. Peter made it very clear that safety and security was of the utmost importance.
Right.
But that didn't mean we didn't have to work through the challenges of the labor realities.
And I would argue you might have a little different guest experience philosophy between a presidential event and hosting.
Right. Like I could tell
if you wait in line to come to see the president,
you're going to wait in line.
You don't care.
Yeah, but you wait more than 10 minutes in line for an NBA game, and it can be a little more. There's a customer service side of that you have to work hard on.
A little balancing act.
A little bit.
So when we got to opening Fiserv, and we did a number of things to help prepare you. You have a good team with some of the guys that you have there, Joe and Dave. What kept you up at night prior to opening?
Prior to opening, just had we written the protocols enough, and do people understand the protocols? The reality was we were in pretty good shape, but you're never going to know until you get reps. It was all about getting the reps in.
Yeah.
We were fortunate that with the Bradley Center closing, which was the building we used to be in, and this one opening 100 meters to the north, a lot of that staff we could hand select and bring over.
Right. So
they had the experience of running a sports and entertainment event. So that was not a foreign concept to my team, a lot of my team. But just getting, I think we had 8 events in 9 days or something like that. I know it was 5 concerts in 5 days. And we were just like a shot out of a cannon. And we pretty much rode that all the way till COVID.
Yeah.
But what keeps me up at night is something big, a big boom or bang going off. I feel really good about our interior plan from the doors in.
Yep.
We've got enough reps to be confident in that. The one thing we struggle with is the manpower, right? That the whole industry does right now.
Right.
So we've got a great plan, but now the challenge is the manpower to staff that plan.
Yeah, and I've had Jim Mercurio on this, and we got into this conversation, and we can apply all the technology we want to these risks. We can mitigate with all this. It's really getting that process in place and getting that training and
the
building
consistent
the team.
application of that process.
Yeah. We're in a completely different labor market now. You've got you're still filling the building. But that staffing issue is throughout the industry. How are you dealing with it in Milwaukee, and how's it? Which way do you see it trending?
I think it trended down hard. It was seriously masked for us though, so I don't think we panicked as we should have. We didn't hit the panic button soon enough. We knew it was coming, but because when we opened back up, it was to no fans.
Right.
We secured most of the season with no fans in the building, so a false sense of security, right? Like floor security was, half of what it normally would have been for a regular NBA game. We had a public doors, but we had one.
Right.
There were some games we only had 200 people in total.
Right.
Staff, everybody was 200 people in. So, and then we started trickling fans back in. We were going, oh boy. And then people weren't wanting to come back to work because either they're scared of COVID or their stipends they're getting from the government equal to what they were making to pay, so they just decided not to come back to work.
Well, I was there that night that you had the first full house again.
Yeah.
And we were testing some other technologies, but yeah, I mean, staff is such a challenge, and going back to reopening during COVID, around the industry, and not pointing the finger at any arenas, there were some interesting incidents with not many people in the building.
Right.
Some might say we took our eye off the security ball for a little bit because we were so busy with health department, COVID, testing. And did you see that at your building?
We didn't see any real incidents that I know of. I mean, I could be completely wrong. But we didn't have any incidents of fan interactions or anything that was so problematic that made national headlines. I know we had some popcorn throwing. We had some verbal altercations and interactions. Fortunately, we haven't really had to deal with that much in our building. What was it, going back to what you were saying before though, there was a real push in the industry to have our guys become the enforcers of the COVID mask mandates and the policies, which is taking their eye off of security matters. And we can do that to a point, but what happened really quickly is the public didn't want to be told not to wear a mask when they're coming to a building. And, we got to half capacity, so we had 7,000 people in the building. Well, half of them aren't going to wear their masks. Am I really going to kick half the building out? The answer was no.
Right.
So we had to make some decisions of where we would be strategic with our enforcement. So right around the bench, we could articulate, hey, you have to have your mask on around the bench to protect our players and our assets. But that you had to really be picking your battles on that one.
What are some of the toughest things that you've experienced while being at the arena or with the team on the road?
Well, team on the road's different than the arena. When we're at home, I feel much better. We travel. Have a traveling group of guys, highly trained, highly qualified individuals, all former law enforcement, complete professionals, Greg Jones and Danny Carter and Drew Moutry. So those guys are awesome at what they do, traveling with the team and taking care of them.
You're a couple of years into running the building, you know, and when we design these things and we sit around and we're looking at drawings and we're saying we're going to need this, we need that, and no, we don't need that. What did we miss? Like, now that you've operated it for a while.
I think about this every once in a while when I walk through the building, because we're looking at floor plans and you're looking at it in 2 dimensions. You're not getting that 3D view. Paying attention when we're mapping these cameras out, but there's these open spaces. Paying attention to the next level up and the next level down that you might already have a camera there. So you'll go to certain points in the building and there's a camera there and one right there underneath of it. The next level down, but they're both looking at the same thing.
Right.
It doesn't happen a ton, but keeping an eye on that. I know, and you and I fought this together. We went key card access for the whole building, and in an honest effort to reduce cost, or what, I forget what the terminology people were using. Hey, let's cut the key cards off these certain doors and we'll make them keys.
Yeah.
Well, now they regret that.
Little value engineering.
Value engineering, which was a poorly abused term by some people in the construction process. Hey, we'll value engineer that out. And the one of the key cards that got value engineered out was the referee locker room.
Come on.
And I fought it. No, we can't take this out. It needs to stay in. No, we're taking it out. What do you think the number? Where's the key to the referee locker room? You know, so either all in or out on the technology. Don't get into this halvesies kind of stuff.
It's interesting because we're on another design project with the Seattle Mariners that we just kicked off this week.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a different project because it's an upgrade of a 25-year-old building with really old systems.
Lipstick on a pig.
But I'm not dealing with an architect and a general contractor and all of the different inputs that get to, let's not have a card reader on this door.
Right.
We can develop the ROI pretty quickly on why spending $2,000 to have a card reader on that door, including the conduit and the electrified hardware and everything else, makes a ton of sense.
Right.
But when we get all these other players involved, 10 times 2,000, all of a sudden they start adding it up, and it's not really 2,000 because there's so many people taking a piece of the pie.
But when you divide that out over a 25-year lifespan of the building and realize, because on some of these things we've had to go back now and, yeah, we really should have done this. And I will never say I told you so to people because that's not the right way to work. But now we're spending $8,000 to go back and retroactively put a key card in here when we could have spent $1,500 at the time of the build.
Exactly.
So having a good justifiable plan with a design that is consistent through the building and be able to justify it on the front end and having people trust you with your knowledge,
right,
is super important.
Or your consultant.
In the consultant. I was actually referring to you. So, other than when I came up with that secondary screening plan.
Right.
Yes.
Right. I've met some others that claim that they came up with that also. We've mentioned Peter Fagan a couple times,
yep.
And just as we were talking about value engineering,
mm-hmm.
He used to beat us up a lot about how much we were spending on security technology and stuff. Is he still giving you a hard time about that?
Yeah, and I'll say this though, Peter gives that hard time equally to all departments.
Agreed.
The trick of it is, and anybody in security deals with this, we're not a revenue generating. Rarely are we a revenue generating arm.
Right.
We're seen as a cost.
We're going to figure that out one day.
If we can figure that out, we're golden. There is an opportunity for it that I'll talk about here in a minute. But he's always just challenging us to make sure we're the value of the dollar we're spending and we're getting the best bang for our buck that we possibly can.
Right.
Where I think there's some opportunity here as we get into facial recognition and those kinds of, where's this industry going to be in 5, 10, 20 years? Facial, if there's any time that you can get a technology that can be obviously security driven, but hey, if marketing can get in on
right.
this, if the advertising folks, the marketing folks, the ticketing folks, if we can get them in and say, hey, this technology can be used for what you need as well. Now I'm getting this technology used for people that are generating revenue for the company. That's a point of where we can really, an inflection point that we can do some good.
You know, we've talked about it on a number of projects, and we've never gotten there. We talk about analytics from a security perspective, not from a guest services perspective.
Right.
We bring it up on a guest service perspective. If we had the analytic, if we had the camera coverage, and I know it all costs money, is there a value to know when Mr. Fagan walks through a door and you know he's going to suite X and it unlocks that door using some of the analytics that exist out there today?
Yeah, I think that's where you're driving at, this premium customer experience.
Right.
And I'll use a different use case, but I have Mr. Smith, who's the CEO of Acme Goods here in Milwaukee. Big spender, important to our company, good friend of the company. When he arrives and comes through the VIP entrance,
Yep.
if we can make the move from traditional magnetometers to the more frictionless technology, whether it's OpenGate or Evolve or Patriot or whoever it is,
Right.
we can get them through there so it's a more seamless experience, more pleasant experience. And then when they hit that, a camera captures them, scans Mr. Smith's face and says, okay, Mr. Smith has arrived. We know he's in suite 18. Notify suite 18 so the person up there, the bartender who goes to the bar, which has been notified, has his favorite drink ready.
Right.
And as he's coming into his suite, his favorite drink's coming to him and saying, Mr. Smith, welcome.
Right.
That's where we want to get to. It sounds simple to say it like that, but the level of integration and technology, which is not there yet, I think will be there in 10 years. That's what we want to get to so that our customers, especially our higher spenders, are getting that premium experience, so they're willing to pay that kind of money and have an even better experience.
I think there is an argument that value exists. And I do think we're looking at some technologies now for some other projects. I think we can get there quicker.
I hope so.
I think there is the ability to do so. The Bucks are such a great story in Milwaukee.
Couldn't be better. Couldn't have written it better.
The way, the ownership took control of this space in a little bit of a derelict part of Milwaukee prior to the arena going in.
Well, a little bit. It was an abandoned section of downtown Milwaukee.
I was trying to paint it nicely.
No, I mean, that's the reality of it.
Build this phenomenal building, training center, F&B, retail.
30 acres, yeah.
It's not only a great story about the development side, but then the team goes and makes it to the finals.
Right.
Like
when ownership said on day one, we're here for real. They had a challenge. They were from out of town, right? The four major owners were out of New York City. So that was you had to get buy-in. And Peter Fagan is the one who got buy-in locally, going around meeting with his people, meeting everybody, shaking hands, kissing babies, all that stuff. But they went out and boldly said, we're bringing a championship to Milwaukee. And then to go out and do it,
it's amazing.
It's beyond amazing.
But it puts a little more pressure on you.
Well, a lot more people coming now, a lot more attention.
And I'm sure we'll add some of the graphics for our viewers. But we sat around these design meetings. We're gonna have this great plaza, and we can have all these extra entertainment, all this fun stuff.
Yeah.
Until you get to the finals.
Wow,
And you bring a broadcast set in.
Yep.
You set up a video stage.
Yep.
And how many people on the plaza?
Well, the plaza was designed for 9,000. I think we probably had on the plaza physically itself 10 to 15. In the vacated Bradley Center lot, the plaza, the alleyways, the streets had been taken over. The police estimate was 60,000.
Plus the building.
Yeah. I spent my position for a game typically is I'll arrive, check in with my supervisors, do a walk around the building, go watch ingress. During playoffs, I'd step out on the plaza and do a tour out there. Come inside, check in with my team security guys, watch the team get on the floor, tip off what happened. I'd sit and watch the first quarter at a certain section downstairs. Second quarter, I go for a walk around the building. Halftime, stop by the operations center, and then spend the second half of the game kind of at the game, just watching what's going on. Watching the court because it's our important people, but paying attention to everything on my phone. Game 6, I got called off the court during the national anthem because of what was happening outside with the people, and I didn't make it back to the court until there were 2.5 minutes left in the game.
Yeah,
I was outside the whole time.
It's an uncomfortable feeling.
Very uncomfortable, and it wasn't for lack of planning. It's just you can only plan so much. And the city hadn't been through that before. So there was a very strong relationship with the PD, the fire department, Office of Emergency Management. It's just the reality is we had 60,000 people show up with no rules.
Totally
we
insecure.
had a perimeter. We had an 8-foot or 10-foot fence perimeter. Bag checkpoints, visual checks. We didn't have the capacity to screen 60,000 people.
Right.
But at some point, the fences got torn down. The emergency chutes we had built with bike rack went to God. They were just using those to surf them over their head. We had kids climbing the light poles with all the cameras on them. So our access cameras supported a lot of weight that night. We didn't. I don't want to say we were holding on.
Yeah.
There was a point there where we were going, this is not good. And I think we knew that. We documented it. We did a white paper write up on it, and then when Travis Scott happened, it's kind
Right.
of that's you can see how that can happen very quickly.
Right. So April of 22,
Yes,
you're gonna have it again.
we're gonna have it again. More control.
Knock on wood.
Tick-
Finals in Milwaukee.
But yeah, finals in Milwaukee, ticketing the plaza.
Great.
Okay, and capping it at a certain number, trying to define, okay, that's great, but we put a fence up and people tear it down, like what kind of fencing are we putting in? So we're looking at options for that. Then there's a general admission area to the south of the Bradley Center lot. How do you control that? How do you work with your marketing partners to put realities on, hey, if you don't have a ticket, don't come downtown.
Right.
Those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And then after seeing what we had last year, and with our law enforcement partners and our public safety partners, just having a better plan and talking sooner. We started talking months ago about what are we looking at here?
Were you surprised at the amount of people that came last time?
I mean, I guess yes and no. But people were coming from Minnesota. They were coming from Iowa. They were coming from Northern Illinois. Our team, again, kudos to our marketing group. We purposely went. We're not just Eastern Wisconsin. We want those either disenfranchised fans or people that haven't had a reason. And people traveled 3, 4, 5 hours to come without a ticket, to come be a part of this event on the planet. And it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing out there. But it looked great. It really did. ESPN thought it was the greatest thing ever. But security professionals are going, this is not good.
Were there any real problems out there?
But there were people.
Some medical stuff?
Not some. There was a lot. We know that we had 27 ambulance transports that night, both from on our property and from in the immediate area that we know of. We never could quantify what was related to that. But the reality is, people are going to come out. People who have no business coming out as fans in those environments are going to come out. Diabetics,
right?
People that have breathing problems, asthma, those kinds of things, and they're coming out to truly be a part of this thing, and they find themselves in a crowd situation where they're blocked in. We had some choke points where you couldn't move,
right?
Which is, you can't really design that out, and that was a challenge.
In addition, we went through a time in this country with a lot of protest activity.
Yeah.
You experienced some.
Yep.
Some of your players got involved.
Yep, we led some of the protests. Yeah.
Well, tell me about that. You had public brandishing weapons.
Yeah.
At a protest.
Yeah, not during one of our games.
Right.
But our players have always been very active in voicing their concerns, and rightfully so. And it was our job, and then we'll get into the team security side of it. We had several players participate in a couple different events, and as putting on my team security hat, I went with those guys out to march in these marches. And there were people with AR-15 standing right next to us. We had to, work with them to, hey, you need to go away.
Right.
And I think that was a real eye-opener for our players, because I think they knew that was out there, but when they saw it, wow, this is something. And these weren't trained people.
Right.
People with AR-15s with no sights on them. We were prepared to take care of the guys, but we had to really keep an eye on that. It was an uncomfortable situation for sure.
I'm sure.
But then the Bucks led a protest, and we had a whole evac plan and worked with the police. And this is where the players are going to march. So here's how we're going to get out of this. If it goes sideways, there was you get the whole Secret Service side of things, and
right.
Kind of the mentality of how to think about that.
Where do you think we are today? We're we have enough issues going on in the country, but you got games going on. You're hosting events. They're full house events.
Yeah.
Do you see that kind of activity coming back to really have an impact on your events in Milwaukee?
They didn't. We're talking about the marches and those kinds of things. they didn't impact us before, and that's not to say they couldn't impact us in the future. I think our organization has demonstrated support for voicing the concerns of different communities. Milwaukee is 50% Black community, so there's a very strong Latino community, and our organization works really hard to hear those voices and a very strong community service effort through our outreach programs. It could come up, and we'll deal with it when it happens. I think our police department does a wonderful job. I mean, being in law enforcement now is not an easy thing. No. But the reality is, and I think the country's starting to see this a little bit, is, hey, there's plenty of reform that can be done in any career, law enforcement included. But we can't do our jobs from a security standpoint, and we can't enjoy these kinds of events without their support and their 100%. Expertise. So 100%. I think we have to find that balance of mutual respect and understanding how to work with each other to be a part of both as fans and security and police.
If you want to come to Minneapolis next weekend, my team is managing all the security for the women's Final Four in Minneapolis. And it's a very interesting dilemma because I grew up in that area.
Right. And
I've been back there for a few site visits, and it's sad to see downtown Minneapolis. Mm-hmm. It's relatively depleted.
Right.
Now, a lot of that has to do with COVID.
Yep.
And businesses not being back full strength. But it's also, we work very closely with Minneapolis PD on a number of topics planning for this event. And to see their department kind of hamstrung the way they are, lack of resources. I mean, they're
people
probably
retiring, not filling academy classes, the whole 9 yards.
Right. I mean, they're probably 40% down on officers from their approved budget. And it's tough to see because that's Minnesota, Wisconsin. They're a very proud area, mm-hmm. And so if you want to come over and help out, we'll put you on the team.
I'll come over anytime. No, it's a challenge too because when an organization like the NCAA or the DNC or the RNC come to evaluate your building, and you want those events because it's revenue, it's exposure, it's just great stuff. They're going to be looking. One of the things they're looking at is, can your police department support the needs of this event?
Right.
And cities like Minneapolis or any of the cities that are having those kinds of problems, they could lose events because they can't perceive that they can't get the law enforcement support needed to support an event.
Right.
The reality, you have to have great law enforcement support to carry off these events.
Yeah, and it's interesting what we've seen there too, because we do have to be very conscientious of the public that we're there for. In this case in Minneapolis, and the George Floyd matter was very national news, international news, and it was an officer that acted inappropriately, but that department got that kind of black eye over it.
Right.
Some of the venues in the downtown area really came up strongly in support of George Floyd, mm-hmm. and it's put a really negative relationship between police department
right.
and those venues and their ability to staff the way they need to for these events.
Right.
It's a really different dynamic that we're dealing with.
We've been fortunate in Milwaukee. I think because we had an issue a couple of years before with Sterling Brown.
Right.
There was an incident that took place where the police acted out of line in an encounter with Sterling, and we as an organization, and trying to be as objective as possible, stood up for our player and said, hey, this can't happen. This was inappropriate. This has to be handled. Some in the police department took that as the Bucks are anti-cop.
Right.
So myself, Peter, and others had to work really hard with the police department. Hey, this is not a Bucks versus police thing. This is an individual matter where we're saying there has to be accountability. And that was a challenge for a couple of years. And then there was a change in leadership at the police department, and the acting chief, now permanent chief, myself, and Peter, a lot of talking, a lot of communication. We've done leadership courses for the police department to show the partnership, those kinds of things, so we can show that, hey, we can speak out about certain things, but we can also still be partners in all of this. And I think we're in a really good place with the police department now, but that takes a high level of liaison.
Right.
So we've not been impacted from a manpower standpoint with the police yet.
Where do you see next? Like we're at this show here in Vegas, IC West, and we're looking at technologies and stuff. But what's next on your horizon as challenges you're going to have to figure out?
Well, short term, we've already talked about is the manpower.
Right.
The greatest plans in the world are awesome, but if you don't have the people with the right skills to carry it out, and the reality is technology can only take you so far. you still have to have human interaction when you're executing a security plan.
Right.
It will always be that way, much like flying a plane, right? Like you can automate to a certain point, but you still have to have human interaction.
Good point.
So, not to beat a dead horse, but that's the big. I mean, that's really the biggest thing right now. If I didn't have a manpower problem, things are a lot easier.
Right.
But from a technology standpoint, the things that I'm interested in right now are the high density screening technologies.
Yep.
Where they are, where they're going, what the realities of them are, and where our industry will go with what's acceptable and not acceptable. So I think that's a big one. And then how does facial recognition technology play into the daily operations of your security program?
Right.
I'm very interested in that. Not as so much as in real. I thought I'd be more interested with real time. Hey, this just happened or is happening. This person just came in. I'm being alerted. We're deploying security or police as needed. What I found now after operating the building for 4 years is forensically.
Right.
I've got 800 some odd cameras in that building, and multiply that out by the number of it's just hours upon hundreds and thousands of hours of information. And oftentimes we don't find out something happened until after the fact. Going back and gathering that information and having the right software available to do that. So we're evaluating some technology right now to do just that I hope to have in place this year.
It's an interesting, the whole conversation about analytics. We've been talking about it for a long time.
Yeah.
It is expensive. It costs to do it. But, I mean, I think one thing we haven't done really well is capturing the man hours to do that task without the analytics.
Right. So
and start looking at that out.
If we just have, I'll describe one incident we had in the past couple of months, and this was just a great story. We had, we ingress 18,000 people in the building. Coming across our main plaza, our main entrance, accounts for probably 60% of the people coming in the building.
Right.
Those lines get fairly, we get 10 to 15 minute lines at the peak, and then they scale down. And once that's over with and everybody takes a breath, our plaza security team will do a sweep through the plaza. They'll change out the trash cans, we'll go through the bushes, did anybody drop anything, and we find knives and all kinds of stuff. Well, during a sweep not too long ago, they found a loaded .357 Magnum, which is a big find. And we go, oh, okay, this is significant. Hey, AOC, our Arena Operations Center, here's what we found. Here's the item. Go back and watch they had to sit there and watch the video to see who approached and dropped.
Right.
And it took them about 20 or 30 minutes, and they found the person dropping it. The son of the person that dropped the weapon had a very distinct hat on. And I think this was Monster Jam was the event, or Flat Out Fridays, one of the two. So a very unique crowd.
Right. A little different than your Bucks season.
Yeah. So, but I'm talking like this is a Where's Waldo type hat, very distinct. Instead of using an analytic, which we didn't have at the time, they just went to the PTZ in the bowl and started sweeping through, and that hat popped in 5 minutes.
Right.
And there's the hat. There's the guy who dropped the gun. Sent the police, pulled him out of the stands. He admitted, yep, I found the gun while walking to the arena, laying on the ground.
Come on.
Said okay, and they got his information, and then let him go. COVID can't arrest all that stuff. Meanwhile, they ran the gun. Well, it came back. Some sort of incident with it took place based on that serial number up in Minnesota.
No.
Went back and arrested the guy. So significant fine. But my point being my guys did it fast, and it took an hour or two to get all that stuff pulled together.
Right.
Some of the tech out there now.
So easy to find that hat.
Hey, here's the video of the guy on the plaza. Quick, run it through the building. Where is he? And
right.
I got the answer in 2 minutes. So
exactly.
That's the kind of stuff we need to get to. But it's also easier said than done. Like it's easy to say, hey, we want this, but having the plan to execute on it and someone that's knowledgeable to run the system, which is a whole other thing about labor.
Right.
Is a challenge.
And it brings up one other topic that I want to touch on, because I think, and I've had this conversation with some of our counterparts. I think we've missed a piece in our staffing plans for building security departments. We've thrown all this technology in,
mm-hmm.
and we don't put anybody on your team in the early days that's a security technology guy. Right. We've got Dave and Joe and ex-former this and that, or they've been at this arena, or they've got this experience. But I think we're doing our counterparts a disservice by not saying in your staffing plan, you're going to need somebody that really understands this technology. Because relying on your IT group best intentions,
Yeah, so
their hands are full.
So are you talking about from an IT perspective, like a hardware understanding the system perspective, or an operational perspective, or both?
It's both.
Okay.
Understand, I've got all this software.
Right.
How do I use it to its fullest capability?
So I went out and visited just last week. I had not seen Chase Center yet out in San Francisco, and I hopped on that trip with the team and visited with Brian Herbert out there.
Yep.
Who's a great host, and Brian's very good at what he does.
For sure.
Very well organized, very well thought. And we went into his operations center, and he's talking me through his staffing. I have more video board than he does.
Yes.
But he has in his staff, he's got 2 security technologists basically, and their whole job is all they do is monitor the system and run the system, pull video, whatever. That's their whole job.
Right.
Whereas I have an operator who does that, but he also does a couple other things too. So I really liked that piece of dedicating someone to that system, especially when you're in event mode.
Well, and to send that person to go get all that extra training with said platform.
Right.
Whether it's your video
1000%.
management platform, or you bring in an analytic, or, whatever that is.
Right.
Because I've gone to a lot of, I could go to your building and go, hey, are you guys utilizing X, Y, and Z?
Right.
No, we haven't done that.
Yep.
Right? Because it's hard.
Well, it's a Ferrari with 8 gears that we're probably running in 3rd gear.
Right.
That's the reality of it.
I think it is something that we should be discussing more of, and getting that expertise as part of the security team.
Yeah, and paying appropriately for it.
Well,
that's the other part of it, staffing and paying appropriately. And the other part too is the maintenance of the system.
Yep.
Right. We're partnered with JCI. We use JCI's Victor Video Edge for our video management, and Secure 9000 for our software house for our access control, all unified under one pane of glass. But it's a complicated system, and over the years and all the trials and tribulations we went through, they basically took a system and pushed it into a sports and entertainment arena. It works pretty well now, but they learned an awful lot as a company when they were doing that. Mike Wydell, who's a PhD engineer type for JCI, he basically lived in the building for 4 years.
Right.
Designing, pulling, plugging, all this stuff. Well, he retired last year. Did I tell you this?
No.
Mike retired. You remember Mike?
Yeah.
Great guy. Love him to death. And he's like, I'm retiring. I'm like, oh crap. Okay. So because of the agreements we have with JCI, they owe the service on things. New guy came in and we never saw him, never heard anything. Things are starting to fall through the cracks.
Right.
I'm starting to raise my hand going, hey, this is not kosher. Well, Mike comes back 6 months later and says, hey, Adam, can I come work for the Bucks? I said, are you serious? He goes, yeah, just, not full time, but, I said, what are you thinking? He said, I don't know, 16 hours a week. I'm like, okay, what are your pay requirements? And he's like, I don't know, $25, $35 an hour. Done. So he's now a part-time security specialist.
See, I think that's necessary.
And we've charged him with, hey, grid out all the cameras, where are we on life cycle?
Right.
What's out of sync? What NVRs need to be rebooted? Hey, these cameras need to be readjusted because they're out of focus now. All those things. He's going through and doing a lot of things, and not that JCI wouldn't do it, but they just don't have the on-site every day. Heck, and to be honest, it's a huge, massive cost savings for us.
I'll touch on one more thing then, because you brought it up, and we've experienced this with a lot of buildings. Mm-hmm. Your team decided to take a check.
Yes.
Sponsorship that included the security systems. And it was a heck of a exercise. Mm-hmm. And I recall, Peter sitting both of us down and even calling me from time to time and saying, how are we going to make this work? Right? Because we're going to take money.
Right. Well, we already took the money.
Right. It was a tremendous experience, and we put JCI, their systems, through a bunch of obstacles to try and get them there. They've done a really good job.
They have, yeah.
But it
took some time to get
there. It was
there.
Ugly, huh?
The first 2 years were tough.
Yeah.
Really tough, because when I came in, we were driving piles on the ground. You and I are looking at diagrams to completely redesign the AOC. That's the difference between an engineer designing the room and a security expert designing a room, right? So that's another important point. But JCI was tough, and we put the KPIs together, and we need you to hit these. And they had engineers in from Belfast sleeping on hot cots, hot swapping cots, and it was I don't want to say touch and go, but it was a lot of work that went into that. I think JCI learned a lot about their system,
right?
And they were able to tighten a lot of stuff up, and that's why I think there's non-sports and entertainment units out there now that use their system that I wasn't aware of until actually this conference. I heard a couple. I was like, oh, that's
right.
That's interesting that some of those companies are using that enterprise system with a lot of success. I like to think some of the stuff that we've done has helped.
Well, I think it was a ton.
Bring that system along.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was in a tough place. We got to a good place, and I think that's also about having the right people involved. I don't, as an end user, I don't understand a big corporation like JCI's structure.
Yep.
So, there's the video management section, there's the access control section, but then there's the integrator section, which I didn't understand that integrators and company proper don't necessarily do this.
Right.
And there was also a buyout with them. They bought Tyco
right
in the middle of all this, which really confused things.
Well, that did.
That was a big challenge for us too. But we eventually got to the right people, and they got us where we need to be. And from where I sit, I mean, there's still challenges, a lot of give and take, and a lot of, hey guys, we got to keep on top of this. But we're in a good place.
Do you think the money that you took was worth the pain to go through what you had to go through? Or would you say to, future, colleagues of ours, if you can keep security technology out of your partnership agreements or sponsorship agreements, please do it?
Well, I think obviously you're going to say that, right?
Right.
I had no concept of this until I was in the middle of it going, what the hell's going on right now?
Well, I think we talked about it day one in Orlando.
Yeah, but you don't know it until
Right.
you're going through it, right? Now, hearing some of the other stories, I think we ended up better than a lot of other places that went through the same thing. The reality is most buildings end up with some sort of security rider on there. There's money involved. Would I recommend not doing that? Absolutely.
Right.
But yet again, here we are, a non-revenue generating sector who money is money.
Yep.
Right. But I think there are protections you can put in place that we learned.
Right.
Right. Hey, you have to hit these standards or the system won't work.
Right.
So go with a reputable company. Don't go with. There's only 3 or 4 people out there or companies that can do this the right way in the sports and entertainment industry, as far as I'm concerned. I think you're this.
Yeah.
Say the same thing.
Yeah.
We're at this conference right now. I was out on the floor today. There's probably 50 camera companies out there.
Right.
Half of them won't be here next year.
Right.
I've never heard of them, and I'll never see them again.
Right.
So who are the mainstays? Who are the players? Who are the value partnerships?
Yep.
We went 100% access cameras in our building, and those guys have been great partners. JCI has been great partners in servicing our needs. JCI has never told me no. Once we got the right people in place,
Yeah.
It's like, hey, we'll fix this. We'll get this where it needs to be. But would I recommend it? No, but the reality is, I think that's just the way it is. So when you're talking about the kind of money you're talking about,
Exactly.
it's where you need to be.
That's the way the business is going to be.
But I think there is a way to set expectations and standards ahead of time with these companies going, hey, we've been through this before. We know what we're talking about. You have to be able to do this or this won't work.
Yeah. Listen, we've been on a number of these projects with different corporate interests, with different checkbooks.
Right.
Where we got with JCI and the KPIs that we developed and got them to agree to, I've never seen on another project.
No, I mean, and you're my
Right.
you're my Sherpa through all this, and
I was amazed that they agreed to what they agreed to.
Right.
And we saw some of those folks yesterday, and I take my hat off. They lived up to it.
Well, like I said, I think we were shocked too, but to their credit, they lived up to everything they said they would.
Right.
It wasn't maybe the easiest path, but that company really worked, and to this day still works on, hey, we're the first ones to get the updates on the system.
Yep.
We're the first ones to get this new tech. Hey, try this. We just talked last night with some of the guys. I said, one thing you guys don't do, use my bill. We have a partnership. You guys are a founding partner of the Fiserv Forum. When you've got this new tech, and right before I came here, I went to their science and innovation room. Did you make it over there?
I haven't yet.
They've got a new robot. They've got LiDAR, which is really cool looking stuff. A mail detection system that ties into Victor. I'm like, okay, this is cool stuff. Bring it to my building and let's get some reps. Bring it in for 4 weeks. Bring it in for 6 weeks, and we'll spend a couple weeks making sure it does what you want it to do, and then I can bring people in like Dan and the Green Bay Packers and the Brewers down the street, hey, come look at this, what we're looking at. I might not buy it from you,
Right.
but here I am. What's the first question we always ask when we see a new tech?
Where are you seeing it?
Has it been deployed in the
Who else is using it?
Who else in the sports entertainment industry
Right.
is using it? 9 times out of 10, the answer is like nobody.
Right.
If you can at least say, well, the Bucks tested it in their building. Go talk to them about what it is. That's where you start getting buying on new technology. And that's about being good partners too.
Absolutely. And having an operator speak about a technology is always better than having the manufacturer try and tell you how great it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, look, I appreciate your time.
Pleasure, brother.
Thanks for coming out.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is awesome.
Great to have a great conversation.
Yes, sir.